Finally, and certainly not the least, I welcome Madhav Sitaraman, one of the rising stars in the startup world. Madhav is the co-founder and COO of Enlytics, which is focused on building healthcare products and solutions using predictive analytics and big data technologies. He has over 15 years of IT experience, 12 of which have been in healthcare. His work has been focused on US healthcare market, building products and solutions for the payer, provider, and life sciences organizations. Welcome.
Thanks, Vanita, for that introduction, and thanks to Hive for having me here. The previous speakers have spoken about the unreasonable, given you a perspective of what's out there. I'm here to talk about the reasonable, hopefully. I want to talk about the US healthcare system. It's an important one. It's an industry which has evolved over a period of time, and a lot of things have happened there which has actually cascaded down into many other countries. And we are using those kind of innovations. But before we kind of jump in and understand where this industry is, we need to understand a little bit of the history so that we kind of know why it is at a particular stage and where the change is coming in. I'll let you read this. Isn't this true? I mean, every one of us, at some point or the other, whether it's personal or our parents, our friends' parents, or whoever it might be, we've always had this kind of a situation where a lot is being done for very simple things. And this is probably one of the factors which today the US healthcare industry is acknowledging and trying to change that. And let's see where and how this came in. So US spend on healthcare. In 1970, they were spending about 7% of their GDP. Today they spend about 17.2% of their GDP on healthcare. What's the spend for India? It's actually 4% as of 2012. And I mean, if it's a typical industry, you would say there's a good thing, right? 17.2%, you're looking at a share of the wallet. You might think that people are valuing good health and they're actually investing in it. But that's not so true. The reality is completely different. Let's understand a little more in terms of the numbers. US healthcare, right? So 10 years ago, they were spending about $1.4 trillion in healthcare. In 2011, they are doing $2.7 trillion. That's like 100% rise in what they're spending. And that's about $8,680 per person that they're actually investing. That's in Indian rupees, like about 5 lakh rupees every year. Where are these numbers going? I mean, if you really look at it, $2.8 trillion, it goes about almost about a trillion goes into private health insurance. A huge chunk goes into Medicare and Medicaid. These are two government programs. Medicare is for the elderly people. Medicaid is for the poor people. And you see the kind of spread where the money is being spent. Hospital care, physician clinics, professional care, dental, prescription drugs, medical equipments, ton of money is being spent on all sorts of things. And there is already a study which says that only about 50% of this money is really going towards healthcare, and the rest of it is actually being spent on so many other things. Now, what is this ecosystem? I mean, this entire US healthcare about? There are payers, right? The entire industry is driven based on insurance. You have insurance, you get healthcare, you're able to go to doctors and get yourself treated. So the Americans would go to a payer, they would buy health insurance, either directly or through their employer. And when they're sick, they would go to the provider, the healthcare provider, and get themselves treated. And the healthcare provider would send out a claim to the insurance and get the money back. And what were they doing? They were doing a fee for service. Go back to that cartoon which said, you do 100 different things for identifying you're obese. That's exactly what this model is. You kept on spending money for performing a service with no accountability. You never looked at what this means, what is the performance, what's the outcome. You never looked at it. So there's a problem, right? This industry is going through a problem. In spite of having spent so much money, there is a significant amount of American citizens or Americans who are not insured. That's about 48 million. almost 1 in 6 who's not insured. Premiums are going on increasing. People are spending money on their healthcare, but that's not good enough because the insurance company can't keep paying. So they go ahead and increase premiums. Insurance companies are smart too. They go ahead and say that they're going to exclude certain people. They're going to cap their healthcare costs. So someone, let's say they have cancer today, and if their healthcare insurance is going to allow them only up to $300,000, after that you're left to fend for yourself. That's not good. People with pre-existing conditions, right? So if you have diabetes or hypertension, a lot of conditions, you'll have to pay high premiums, you're going to be denied insurance, they're going to use that as a reason to deny claims for you. And then finally, fee for service, right? You're continuously paying them for performing a service. You're not looking at performance. So what's going to happen? The fact is, if you continue to spend this kind of money, the US healthcare spend is going to become so much, it's going to eclipse everything. Maybe just defense is the only thing that's going to stay on top of it. And if cities and towns are actually going to go ahead and actually throw out their financial information, you're all going to be bankrupt. So in reality, it's actually the healthcare system which is terminally ill. And this needs to be changed. Healthcare is a political subject as well in the US, right? So right from Teddy Roosevelt to Lyndon Johnson to Bill Clinton, everyone has used healthcare as the part of their election, their campaigns and everything. So did Obama. It was a big agenda point for him to come in and say that he's going to change something in the system. So with Obamacare, something came up. They came up with an act in 2010, which was the Patient Protection and the Affordable Care Act. August of 2010 is when it went on. And everybody knows this as Obamacare. Now, what did they try and do? Quickly, they said everybody should be covered. Long-term care there should be no cap on it. Everybody should get money for the treatments, pre-existing conditions. Everybody should be taken in. No additional premiums should be charged. Lower income population should also be given the same kind of treatments. All of this doesn't sound like you're changing much, right? You're only looking at increasing the kind of spend that is already there. You're saying cover more, allow everyone to go in and take health insurance, and make sure that they all get the treatment. But then they also tried to say that, okay, the guys who are not insured should also be able to be taking insurance, so that the 48 million would come in through an individual mandate and start spending that money towards buying insurance. There was another piece which came in, which is the Medicare Shared Saving Program, which is probably the most important aspect that I want to kind of talk about in detail. Obamacare Act is like 20,000 pages long, so I don't want to get into that. So I want to talk about that last one, which kind of talks about care coordination and performance. This is a part which nobody has spoken so far in the healthcare industry in the US, and that's what the Obamacare Act really wants to change. So let's see what this whole thing is. So there is something called as an accountable care organization. What this is a group of physicians and care providers who actually come together, and they have to provide care to a population in a particular area. This is primarily a government project, which is called Medicare. It's typically for the elderly people and a couple of other like handicapped and things like that. But an important part to note in this is it works on 3 principles. It says you have to look at quality measures. It has to look at the appropriateness of the care that you're actually providing, and finally efficiency in what you're doing. And the process actually says that you need to start looking and using evidence-based medicine as one of the key decision making that you have to do in your care process itself. And you have to start looking at patient engagement, you have to start looking at providing quality care, you have to start measuring your costs, and you have to make this entire process patient-centric, which is what a lot of the previous speakers spoke about, right? You don't want to be a doctor-driven system. You want to make sure that the patient becomes the center of your whole process. So there is this systemic change that is coming in. There is an opportunity for people to go in and start using new technologies, innovations to actually make this change in this industry. The healthcare industry is extremely slow. There is an inertia to change. And a mandate like this actually forces people to start looking at how you can come up with innovations. What can you do today to create an opportunity for technology to come in and give that capability for the industry itself. I want to talk about what we do today in our organization. Okay, so before going there, one more important aspect of the accountable care organization is something called as readmission management. Very important. If you look at what this readmission management is all about, let's assume that there is a patient who has been admitted and treated for heart failure. And if this patient gets discharged and let's say he comes back again within 20 days and says that he has the same problem, it has not been solved. And the government turns around and says that because you did not take care of him properly, this person is coming back with the same principal diagnosis or the condition with which he got treated first. So from here on, I'm going to go have a penalty on your, I'm going to levy a penalty, and I'm going to make sure that the future care for that person for that disease is free of cost. It's going to come from the ACO. Now, this is huge. It's huge because it is actually bringing in performance. It's moving away from that fee-for-service model to a pay-for-performance model. So there is this huge need for these organizations to start looking at how do I know someone who is getting discharged today is good enough to be discharged? How do I know that this guy will not have some risk or some problem that would crop up, that this guy will come back within 30 days and I will have to deal with this whole penalty and compliance and the remaining costs that I have to incur? All of this is the new challenge that this industry has opened itself up to. So what we do today is we look at something called as readmission management. So we look at risk scoring of patients. We look at their past histories, the reasons why people actually come in and get readmitted. We look at how compliance actually can be taken care by managing the risk itself. We also look at the cost that's involved. So it gives an ability for the doctors or the physicians who are taking that decision to see what could potentially happen if they go ahead and discharge a patient today. How we do this is using something called as a patient similarity. What we kind of do is we profile patients. We create a profile based on patients' past history, their medical history. We look at demographics. We look at their clinical data. We look at various medications that they've been taking, their past medical histories. All of this is taken together and we create patient profiles, which is then used to understand what have been positive outcomes that have been there in the past. How can I make sure that if I'm going to treat a patient today, what is the best way to treat him? Now, this is going directly back into one of those requirements which talk about evidence-based medicine. Now, if I'm able to give substantial amount of information to say that the care that I'm actually giving out to someone is correct by looking at what is the outcome that I've seen on a patient population, the doctors are better equipped. They can actually try and take they can look at more information in their own data or outside their data and then decide the right course of treatment. We also look at something called as clinical pathways. This kind of enables to kind of see what's the future state of health for patients would be. One of the reasons we look at this is preventive care is another very important aspect. There's no point trying to talk about what you're going to do when a patient comes in when he's sick. It is about how do you ensure that patients stay healthy as well. So we started looking at what could be the kind of health condition that a patient might have in future. And that's all coming based on the patient profiling that we do on a large volume of data that we have. How do we do this? So we kind of pull up data from hospital systems. We look at claims. We look at insurance data. We also connect to a lot of external sources. We look at places like disease repositories. We look at PubMed. We got journals. We look at the social media websites. We look at National Library of Medicine, which has a ton of information today, and you have APIs available. I mean, if you really want to go and pull up data, healthcare data, and look at it today, there is availability. You don't have to struggle too much. Now, we take all of this information, and then, again, like what Shesh mentioned, right, you need to know what you have to be looking for, too, in all of this data. So we apply domain expertise, we use machine learning, we use statistical data models, we do data mining on top of this. Plus, we use the big data angle, too, because there is a lot of context to the data. And unless we look at it not just from what's coming from a hospital data, but from a larger perspective, you really don't know what's happening. So we apply all of that, and we try and come up with insights into the healthcare data itself, which kind of helps in making those decisions, which I spoke about in the previous slide. Now, this is what we do, but there is a whole bunch of other things that's actually out there. We look at care coordination. Once patients actually leave the doctor's clinics, how do you ensure that you keep tracking them? How do you know what's going on with them? So we spoke about all those connected devices. How do we ensure that all of this data flows back into the hospital for the doctors who can constantly monitor these things and then address patients who really need those attention. Care delivery. Today, Ponacha said that I don't want to go to the doctor should probably be coming to me. That's really the thing, right? Today, care delivery has to be looked at differently. There's an opportunity to change that perspective. I go to the doctor when I feel I need some attention. But whereas if you can look at the connected devices, you have your mobile devices, you have the internet, we already have seen how telemedicine could work. All of these things could create a new segment where delivery can become a completely different approach. Education. I think this is pretty interesting if you ask me. I mean, not everyone understands medicine, right? But if you really look at when you want to go buy a television, not everybody understands how a plasma technology works or LCD technology works, but you still are able to go out to the internet, or you have these websites where you're able to do comparison. You're able to understand what the technology means, what are the various products, what are the various offerings, and you're able to educate yourself. That kind of an ability is still lacking in this particular space. I still don't know what the care that I'm getting today. How am I going to, is there a different way to do this? I need to go do a lot of research, but there isn't an ability to get educated directly. Social media, I mean, we're all social animals, right? And I think we have already started using the social media to go out and discuss with so many other people about our healthcare, understand how somebody else has had the same problem, what are the symptoms that they faced, how did they actually get over these problems. The social media has actually opened up a significant amount, and these are all areas for coming up with new things. Security innovation. Now, this industry is, the data is extremely confidential. There's a lot of privacy related issues. A lot of innovations don't take off or is not even considered simply because they're not secure enough, or people are not convinced that the way this data is going to be used is not going to work. So people who can actually come up with innovations to show that security can be taken care and still we are able to create models around all of these areas is going to look at a huge change in the market itself. When I say security, I just wanted to kind of tell you what's happening. Now, if you look at the last 3 years of data from most of the healthcare providers, there are about 94% of them which said that there is data breach. And typically the data breach happens across medical files, the billing data, and things like that. This is not good. And the US healthcare has actually put a couple of things which controls this whole ecosystem. There is HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which talks about how patient protected health information should be taken care of. There is HITECH Act, which is the Health Information Technology, Economics, and Clinical Health. That's a mouthful, which also talks about how electronic data exchange has to be considered and what are the privacy and securities that have to be put in place. Meaningful use, MU, looks at how this is going to be constantly measured, and it has various reporting requirements and compliance needs that are there. So all of these things become important if we really want to make a change, because at the end of the day, it is that ecosystem which needs to start accepting these things. And if we are able to play within this framework by ensuring that you're complying to these various bodies, you're actually creating the capability to work within this structure, then that innovation is able to go a long way. Now, let me take a step back. I mean, we've been talking just about the US healthcare and what has been happening. Irrespective of what happens with Obamacare, whether this 20,000 page law and its nuances is actually going to go through or not, time will tell. But the concept that you need to start moving away from just providing care, but to also start looking at the performance, the outcome, is something that's going to change the entire industry. And for me, disruptive innovations in this segment is what is going to help create that capability. And if countries like India and developing nations, this is going to be a great opportunity, and it's going to touch every single one of us in this room and probably everyone in this world in a meaningful way. Thanks.
Thank you, Madhav. That was perfect. We got 35 seconds. Awesome. I was worried that he'd go over.